You are standing in a workshop in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. No fluorescent hum, no breaker panel. A small wooden box on a shelf, $80 in copper, salvaged magnets, a hand-wound coil, and every light in the building is on. The man who built it is in his 80s. His father built the one before. His grandfather the one before that. 3 generations, 1 device, 0 utility bills. Something shifts. The grid was never the only option. You just were never told. By the end of this video, you will know how to build this in the home you already own, using parts from any hardware store for under $100. But to understand why it works, you first need to understand why 40,000 people across Pennsylvania and Ohio never needed the grid. Across the hills of Pennsylvania and Ohio, nearly 40,000 people have quietly maintained a tradition that most Americans left behind. The difference is not a blanket refusal of electricity, but a careful line drawn between self-reliance and outside dependence. In Amish communities, the Ordnung, the unwritten code that governs daily life, does not forbid electricity outright. Instead, it draws a boundary at the public grid. Lights, tools, and even refrigerators are powered by what can be generated or stored on the property, but never by a wire running in from the outside world. This distinction was reinforced in 1919, when Bishop Moses Hartz issued guidance that shaped the approach for generations. The aim was to avoid the outside line, not the current itself. Electricity from a battery, a solar panel, or a water-driven generator could be permitted if it fit the community's values and did not invite unwanted influence. The result is a selective embrace, one that prizes independence, avoids monthly bills, and keeps control within the home. The story here is not about rejection, but about choosing which connections truly matter. In the early 1900s, before the power lines reached every farmhouse, rural Americans had options that would seem almost unthinkable today. A family could open a Sears Roebuck catalog and order a generator or a small home power plant delivered by rail or wagon. These units, often gasoline-driven or water-powered, supplied enough current for lights, a radio, or a milking machine. By 1930, 10% of U.S. farms were wired for electricity, while city homes were already at 90%. The gap was not just about distance, but about how people thought of energy, whether it should come from a neighbor's stream, a shared windmill, or a distant utility. That changed dramatically with the Rural Electrification Act of 1936. Federal loans and a wave of New Deal optimism promised to bring grid power to every farm. The official message was clear: centralized electricity meant safety, reliability, and progress. Public campaigns described home-built systems as outdated and even risky, nudging families to trade in their old generators for a monthly bill and a promise of modernity. Samuel Insull, the architect of America's utility monopolies, spoke in 1923 about the need for a single regulated network. He called self-generation eccentric, even antisocial, a relic of a past best left behind. Within 2 decades, 90% of rural homes were connected to the grid, and the idea of generating your own power faded from the mainstream. Yet, technical curiosity lingered. In 1947, a Cornell University study documented a household-scale induction generator that could run on water flow, validating the practicality of home power. As classroom focus shifted to grid-based engineering, this knowledge quietly slipped out of common teaching. What survived in Amish and a handful of rural communities was not just a device, but a way of thinking about energy that the rest of America stopped treating as normal. A small stream, or even the pressure in a household water line, can be enough to spin an inline micro-turbine. The principle is simple: moving water turns a rotor, which drives a generator. That movement, steady and constant, becomes a trickle of electricity, not just for a moment, but as long as the water keeps flowing. Unlike solar panels, which only work when the sun is out, or wind turbines that sit idle on a still day, A microturbine draws on the quiet reliability of gravity and pressure. It runs day and night, rain or shine, as long as water moves through the pipe. This kind of setup does not demand a roaring river or a mountain stream. Many Amish homes use pressure from a spring-fed line or the outflow from a cistern. Some even harness convection-driven circulation, where warm and cool water naturally trade places in a closed loop, nudging the turbine blades without a pump. The same principle works in a gray water drain, where used dishwater or bathwater flows down a pipe and spins a tiny generator on its way out. In one example, a simple inline turbine powers a single lamp above the kitchen sink, just from the rinse water leaving the house. Building such a system rarely costs more than $100 in parts. Off-the-shelf plumbing fittings, a small permanent magnet generator, and a few hand tools are all that is needed. For a homeowner used to the idea that off-grid power means solar panels, batteries, or a gas generator, the appeal is clear. There is no waiting for the sun, no fuel to haul, no need to check the weather. The light stays on as long as the water keeps moving. It is not about running an entire house, but about reclaiming a piece of practical self-reliance, one that once seemed ordinary and now feels almost forgotten. A second approach, known as the standing column method, takes shape in the basement rather than out in the yard or along a stream. Here, a vertical pipe, sometimes 10 feet tall or more, remains full of water, creating a steady column that uses gravity and temperature differences to keep fluid moving without pumps. In the right setting, this arrangement can quietly produce around 350 kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. That is enough to run a refrigerator, charge batteries, or keep essential lights on. The system operates day and night as long as the column stays intact. The parts list is different from the inline turbine. It relies on a sealed column, a small generator, and careful placement to maximize the natural flow. While it cannot replace every hydro setup or meet the needs of a whole house, the standing column stands out as a passive alternative for homes with the right plumbing and water source. Detailed plans and source documents for these systems remain available in public archives for anyone interested in building or verifying the design themselves. Eli Miller's story brings the idea of household self-generation down to earth. In 1971, Miller installed a 320-watt low-head induction generator on his farm. The purchase, including fittings and wiring, cost about $80 when adjusted for today's prices, a sum that barely covers a month of grid service for many households. Over 53 years, Miller's generator has powered lights, a radio, and the family's essential tools. The system's record is not about size or spectacle, but about quiet durability. With no major repairs and only routine bearing lubrication, the generator has delivered continuous electricity through floods, droughts, and the changing seasons. For Miller, the value lies in ownership and the steady confidence that, as long as water moves through the pipe, the current will flow. This is not an experiment or a showpiece, but a working solution, one that has outlasted appliances, utility rate hikes, and even the memory of neighbors who once doubted it would last a decade. No single micro-turbine or standing column system works everywhere. The entire approach depends on the right combination of water pressure, consistent flow, or a temperature difference that keeps water moving. In some homes, the plumbing layout just won't allow for enough head or steady circulation. Even with good conditions, these systems are best suited to steady, low-power needs, lighting, a refrigerator, or battery charging, not the full load of modern appliances. If the flow drops or the temperature difference fades, output falls just as quickly. The examples shown are conditional, shaped by the quirks of each property and the limits of what nature provides. The economics of household power changed after World War II, and so did the way people thought about energy. For utility companies, centralized service meant steady monthly income. Every new connection added another bill, another long-term customer. A home generator, by contrast, was a one-time purchase. Once installed, it didn't generate revenue for anyone but the owner. As classrooms and trade schools shifted to teaching grid-based systems, practical knowledge about self-generation faded from the curriculum. The business model favored dependence, service contracts, metered billing, and the expectation that electricity should flow from somewhere else, not from your own land. Over time, the skills and habits that once made self-generation ordinary simply fell away, replaced by the logic of recurring payments and outside expertise. Martha Yoder stands as a living bridge between generations, carrying forward methods that textbooks and trade schools once left behind. In her family, the skill of harnessing water pressure for light and power passed not through formal courses, but over kitchen tables and in the quiet routine of checking pipes and bearings. What survived was not only a device or a diagram, but a way of thinking, one that values what can be built, repaired, and understood at home. That inheritance is not locked away in archives. It waits, often unnoticed, wherever a basement pipe hums or a water line runs steady. The next place to look for possibility might be closer than anyone expects. Today, continuous off-grid power from water, once standard in rural homes, remains all but forgotten outside a few communities. As rising energy costs renew interest in home generation, the real loss is practical knowledge, not just hardware. Sometimes, progress means remembering what we chose to leave behind. Subscribe for more grounded investigations.